Hello guys and welcome back to episode 4 of Kerbal Space Program. I'm Neo and let's get right to it. At first I upgraded all of these buildings, the mission control, the astronaut complex, the targeting system and the landing pad to get our missions going. And there we go, our first mission is the manned moon flyby. This is propelled by 2 solid rocket boosters at the bottom and one of our strong LV engines, the one with the vectoring capabilities to keep us stable inside the atmosphere. And once I ditched those solid rocket boosters, I really needed this vectoring range because it became a little bit unstable, as you can see by the wobble here. Otherwise it was a pretty basic ascent up to a nice and stable orbit. This time we're not gonna go for the direct approach, we're just gonna go into a low Kerbin orbit at first, because we've got plenty of time with this and Schiaparelli is flying it, so we don't need to worry about our remote tech not working. Speaking of remote tech, as of the release of this episode today, I believe yesterday the first joint European-Russian campaign to look for life on Mars was launched. It's called the ExoMars program, and its mission is to search for methane gas emissions on Mars, which could indicate presence of life. I believe it was launched on the 14th, yes, that was yesterday as of the recording of this one, and the rocket itself carried a probe named after some Italian astronomer. I will link the name down below, and it will enter the atmosphere in about 7 months, and there will search for any signs of life. It will have a lander and the ExoMars. The ExoMars will orbit the planet and scan the surface for methane emissions in the atmosphere. It's a pretty nice mission, and me as a European, I really like it that the European and Russian space agencies collaborated on this one together. Okay, back to our mission. Now that we got ourselves into a nice 70-kilometer orbit, I mucked around with a precise node to get an exact node where I would get a basically as good as possible a free return to trajectory back to Kerbin after I spent a little time at the moon and would go into low orbit of the moon. I achieved this here, but wouldn't really be a perfect free return trajectory, but I've got enough delta V left to last for a lifetime. So then we execute this burn and try to get ourselves as close to the maneuver node as possible. And I'm gonna show you this in 4 times time acceleration because it took a little bit of time, because we used the more efficient LV engine here. And it's done, but I messed up the maneuver node somewhere, and as you can see, this maneuver node, this projected orbit will propel me outside of the influence of the planet Kerbin. So I will basically have to fix that once I get into the influence of the moon. And there we go, we're in the moon's influence, and I've created a maneuver node that gets me a flyby on the other side of the moon, so my speed will decrease instead of increase when flying past the moon in relation to Kerbin, and I get a nice trajectory that will get me back into the influence of Kerbin. And we're executing the burn now. It only took us a few hundred meters of delta V, and we've got plenty more left where that came from, so that's not a big problem. And by doing this maneuver, I will have changed my Kerbin flyby from a flyby that would propel me outside of the influence of Kerbin to a nice flyby that will get me very close to the planet itself. So we'll only need a few more seconds of delta V to get myself down to the planet again. And there, I'm collecting the rest of the science high over the moon here. The material, the mystery goo, the station, and because I upgraded my astronauts complex, I can also take the EVA reports. And there we are at the moon. We've got this nice moon sunset here, which I really wanted to show you. This was pure luck that we got this. I didn't expect this, but it looks really nice with this mod. And there we go. Once the sun is down, we're gonna go down to below 50 kilometers, and there we can collect the signs near the moon, also material, mystery goo and everything. And then I sent Schiaparelli Kerbin on an EVA to collect all these science samples from the experiments, because only the capsule will returning to the planet. All the other parts will burn up in the atmosphere, because I've put a decoupler here and only I've got a heat shield for my capsule. Then I accelerated in my path around the moon to get my Kerbin periapse down some more, and to get a nice polar orbit going, so I could see and visit the North and South Pole while returning to the planet Kerbin. You will see why I said South and North Pole in a few seconds, because after this I made another deceleration once I left the influence of the moon to get my periapse down, and I was a little bit scared of the re-entry heat, so I only got my periapse down to 42 or 43 kilometers. And now you will see why that was a bad idea, because although it's getting quite hot here and my other stage burned up, my capsule itself will not be able to decelerate fast enough. And there we go, we're at 42 kilometers and 41 with periapse. And now we're rising again. So basically we just dipped into the atmosphere a little bit and bounced off of it, and are going to take another orbit around Kerbin. Luckily for us, we've got enough electric charge for 2 hours, and the orbital period is only 40 minutes. So that's not going to be a problem. And it's going to take us above the South Pole here. And once we dip back into the atmosphere, we get our re-entry heat again here, and this time it's enough to get our periapse down into the minus. There we go. So we're basically gonna land on this fly through of the atmosphere, and there we go. We've slowed it enough down to not be affected by the heat anymore. Our ablator is only half gone, so that worked out good, because it is just a stuck one. In the future we will have better ablator and better heat shields for different capsules. And there we go, with our nice little parachute we got down nicely, and in the back you can see the moon being brightly illuminated by the sun, or at least a little bit brightly. And we got ourselves some science, 343 from this mission, and I'm gonna put it in space exploration because there's a beer here and more science stuff. Then I'm gonna put another one in advanced flight control because I will need the monopropellant for my upcoming remote satellites for the maneuvering. Then the fuel systems, because I really want the fuel lines and the better tanks. And aviation, because for my remote tech stuff I will need the conic fairings. And there we go, our next mission is a completely unmanned satellite to scan the surface of Kerbin and give us a little map view of the planet. So basically map the whole planet with a scan satellite. But we only have the one tracking station at the KSC at the moment, so I'm gonna need to be very careful how I perform this orbit. I need to stay in the influence of the tracking station as long as possible, so I went straight up till I reached about 25 to 30 kilometers and then executed my burn to the north to get myself into a polar orbit. And there we go, the fairing's down and you can see my satellite here. We've got a few solar panels, some battery power, a big communotron to be able to communicate with Kerbin, and the scan radar altimetry scan here that I'm gonna start to get ourselves a planetary map of Kerbin. Maybe find something or that we've never seen before. but I don't think with this low quality mapping software we can do that. And then I burned to get myself into a nice orbit. I could burn until I get an apoapse of 490 to 500 kilometers, because that's where I need to go, and I need to get my periapse above 70 before I lose connection with the planet Kerbin, or with the tracking center to be specific. And after I've done this, I will need to wait until the planet rotates into the right position for me to get a signal again to be able to do the burn at apoapse that will raise my periapse to 490. But we'll see that in a few seconds once this burn is done. My problem that arises now is that my apoapse is way too high at 570 and my periapse is still too low. So I turned myself straight down towards the planet and burned. That way I get my apoapse down and my periapse up in the position that I am, as you see, and I do this until my periapse gets above 70 and then wait again. Luckily I have enough delta V left, so I could muck about with this a little bit. And as we get to apoapse a few orbits later, the tracking station is in the right position, and now I can execute my burn that will get the apoapse down hopefully a little bit and the periapse up where we need it to be. Sadly my apoapse is still too high at 529 kilometers, so I'm gonna need to take care of that later, but for now I'm gonna just need to get the periapse to the right marker. And unlucky for me, the apoapse is also cruising away from us with this burn, so this is not really gonna work out. So because as you can see, apoapse is also rising, so I did this very, very carefully to not let any of the orbital parameters get out of hand. And once I got my periapse right, I tried to adjust my inclination, because it was off by 2 or 3 degrees, as you can see. I need an inclination of 83.1 and I've only got 81, so I decided to do it that way. And the lucky thing for me, because I was a little bit offset of the normal here, I could get my apoapse down a little bit if I wanted and keep my periapse at the right position. Once that was done, I waited for a little bit more until I got to the sun again, and there decided to burn away some fuel to just get my apoapse into the right position here, and then do the burn to get my periapse down to the right amount. And now I just need to wait until the tracking center is on the right side of Kerbin again for me to execute my burn at periapse to decrease my apoapse. This took 3 orbits. There we go, and at the third one I'm inside the view of the Kerbal Space Center. And I've also mapped about 30% of the planet by this, because the scanner is working even if I don't have a connection to KSP, but I can only send back the data once I have a connection and have all the data available. And we're nearly at the right orbit, and this mission will be completed after a few more orbits around the planet and a few more scanning. But that's it for today's episode. In the next one we will build ourselves a remote tech satellite system around the planet so we can send unmanned probes further away. I hope I see you guys next time. And if you like this episode, be sure to leave a comment or click that like button down below. And if you never want to miss an episode again, you can also click on the subscribe box. I hope I see you guys next time.